how to tell you, like, it's an important story, and it's a peculiar story when you think about Black religion. And so I was like, Jocelyn, we getting there. And I've been here twice since then. And I was here this past summer, and I didn't have time. I was in and out for the Black Museums Conference. And so coming back, she was like, you have to meet with my folks. And so I am grateful that you all spent the time and broke out time. So I am the curator of religion at the museum. The museum has a Center for the Study of African American Religious Life. This center was generously funded by the Lilly Endowment. If you're familiar with Eli Lilly.
When you said the museum?
Oh, the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
One of them, D.C.?
Yes.
The museum.
The Black. All right.
I just want to make sure. All right.
Thank you. The Black Museum.
Okay.
Our museum. Look, our home. And so
the Crown Museum.
Absolutely. Look, the one with the crown outside.
Yeah.
I am the curator of religion. My colleague Kim Moyer serves as our public programs producer, and so our work in the center is to tell the totality of the African American religious experience, from Christian to Islam to Buddhist to atheist to voodoo priestesses, wherever Black folks have found themselves religious in Baha'i faith. We tell those stories, we collect artifacts, we preserve that history to really talk about that Black folks aren't a monolith. We have been all over, we've been in many different spaces, we've had to make meaning in this country for ourselves. And that is whether you're in a Christian tradition, a Muslim tradition, or wherever you found yourself. And so we do that work through public programs, we do that work through scholarship, we do that work through research, we do that work through exhibitions. We're a museum. So at Current, we have an exhibition up called Spirit in the Dark, which explores African American religion through photography. So it looks, if you're not familiar, the museum acquired along with Getty, Getty, the Johnson Publication Archive.
Oh, holy cow.
So those 4.8 million images the museum has acquired thanks to some generous donors who made that possible. And so the gratefulness of that remaining also in community. And so that is what that exhibition looks at. It looks at some photography through that archive and looking at how everyday folks engage with religion, from Maya Angelou to Reverend Ike to James Baldwin. How we have Reverend Ike's got some of his clothing in the exhibition, right? How do these individuals engage with religion in the everyday, in pop culture, in music, and the various ways that they've interacted with the world. Our first film, the museum's first film, premiered 2 weeks ago, and it comes out of the Center for Religion. It's called God Talk, where we really explore God Talk. So God Talk started about 5 years ago, and it's a conversation series, and we wanted to take the Pew Research Center, who's really the leaders on faith and surveying Black faith in general in this country. But in 2021, really based off the work we started in 2018 with their older data, we wanted to better understand many religious institutions, whether you are on the Muslim side or on the Christian side, and if you nuance Christianity, wherever you find yourself in there, everyone is struggling with millennials. Right? It's a universal issue of they're not engaged with our traditions in the same way that previous generations were. And so as someone, I used to serve as a pastor, so I served as a pastor in a Baptist church. And so I had the question before I joined the museum 7 years ago. I was like, I'm young, but anybody young here? Right? I'm not the youngest person here, right? In a church that at one point had 300 youth every Sunday, right? So where are these young people? They've not moved out of New York City. It was in New York City. That's where I lived. Like, this is New York City. So most of these people aren't leaving to go somewhere else. They're staying in New York City. Why won't they come to church? And so those questions followed me to the museum. And the joy of doing this work pluralistically was like, this is not unique to Baptist churches. This is not unique to AME churches. It's not unique to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's not unique to Christianity as a whole. It's not unique. It's a problem generationally, right? Particularly for a demographic of people who are inherently religious. right? We're religious,
Yep.
right? We are a religious people. It is what has gotten us through our time in this country, right? And before we got here, we were religious, right? And so that work has led us to, we've won about 42 awards for our God Talk series. We bring Black millennials of different faith to a panel. We let them be them. So you got a Christian person next to a Buddhist person next to an atheist, and they're talking about these issues as it relates to Black faith. And so the culmination of that project was a feature documentary film, which we premiered 2 weeks ago, and it'll travel the country all in the next year. And it follows the lives of 7 Black millennials. You have 2 Christians, you have Buddhists, an atheist, a Muslim sister, you have someone who practices traditional African religion from the Yoruba tradition, and a spiritualist.
Is that the one that's showing at Vanderbilt Thursday night?
Yes,
Okay.
it's the film that's showing at Vanderbilt on
Then I got
Thursday.
tickets.
Oh, I hope, we'd love to see all of you if you can make it. We'll be back in Nashville to screen it next year as well. But,
Okay.
this film really follows that work. So a lot of our work in the center has dealt with, in that way, really breaking ground in the digital, because we realize that everyone can't get to Washington, D.C., but the digital offers us a way to engage with folks around spirituality and religion. Now we have a new publication that came out last year called Double Exposure, Movements, Motions, and Moments. It's exploring African American religion through photography again, right? But it's not just the Johnson publication, it's looking at the museum's archive altogether. So you have many different traditions and religious leaders that are found within this book. And it just really, again, exploring this tradition of the many different ways that we've practiced religion. And so that is some of the work we've been doing. We just finished this doc. We're excited. That's partly why we're kind of moving and going now, is to get it out into the world. But that we are really interested, and part of my job as a curator is collecting, right, and ensuring that we have different stories within our collection. At current, I don't think we have anything related to the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the museum's collection.
Wow.
And so
We're here to solve that problem.
We'll change that for
we,
you.
you know, and we tell people all the time, sometimes we do because it's a person that was a member that we've collected, but it's not identified as that's the reason why we've collected that.
Gotcha.
Right? And so you may be in there like, well, I saw this person, they are Seventh-day Adventists. We didn't identify. And so what I will say is the Center for Religion staff was hired as the museum was opening. So we're behind our colleagues. Many of our colleagues had been at the museum 10 years prior to it opening to the general public. So they were collecting, they were doing the work. Our founding director, Dr. Lonnie Bunch, who's now the secretary of the Smithsonian, realized that it's a federal government entity doing religion. And so they needed to go get outside money to hire a staff of scholars who, that's their job, is African American religion. Many of our colleagues did an amazing job collecting out of their own traditions or what they knew that touched the work that they were doing. So if I'm the fashion curator, I may get religious garments because it connects to what I'm doing, but I'm not necessarily trying to ensure that there's this broad representation of a bunch of traditions, right? And so we were brought in to do that work. So Lonnie's charge to us when we first got there was to fill the holes, right? We know we did the best we could. That's why we went and I've gotten scholars in all other subjects. I went and got scholars in religion. And so that's what we've been doing over these past 7 years, is trying to fill gaps that's in the collection, trying to ensure that traditions that people may not know about, or traditions that aren't the dominant traditions. When you think about Christianity, it may not be the dominant one that people think about, but how do we tell that story? How do we nuance that story to say, no, Black folks we've run the gamut in traditions, right? And how we've shown up and how we've functioned and the life we've made for ourselves, particularly in our religious communities, right? That this often, you know, as our cities are getting gentrified, you all are experiencing it here, just like we're experiencing in New York City, right? As our cities are getting gentrified, our religious institutions are the only things we own in communities now, right? Many of us have been pushed out of communities and are getting pushed out of communities. But what we still have are these spaces. And so the work that we try to do is to ensure, to collect some things. When we're talking about collecting, I tell folks all the time, we don't want everything, we can't take everything, right? It is more so, how do we tell the story of your tradition and of your community through some objects, right? Whether it's I've been with the Sisters of the Holy Family, who are the second oldest African American nunnery out of the Catholic Church, and we went and did 15 oral histories with sisters, ranging from 20 something to I think the oldest was 90 something. And so oral histories becomes a way that we collect from traditions because we're oral people. We pass history through oral traditions, right? And then thinking about the lack of young people in our churches, there ain't nobody to pass nothing to, right? That we're losing the ability to pass because Black religious institutions were our intergenerational spaces, right? And that is shifting. And so oral history becomes one way that we do that, is to preserve oral tradition and the stories of these communities. But also really thinking about what is a representation of Riverside, right? That has this unique perspective and this unique, sits at an intersection of religion and science.
Absolutely.
Right? And religion and science in a very interesting way, which is a very unique story, right? Because as I tell folks, we can't collect from everybody. It's too, if nothing else, we got a bunch of religious institutions, so we can't take everyone's things, right? Some people were like, we're going to send you to your local museum, right? Because that's important for them to have. We can't collect everything. And it's something that we're sensitive to as the Smithsonian, right? That there are plenty of Black museums in our communities across this country. We can't take everything. And it is something we try to also alleviate to our colleagues in these smaller museums, that we're not going to go in and take everything, right? That we think certain stories are very much so local. And so we're going to push people to their local museum because they can preserve history too. And this is a local story. But I think while I would encourage you all to do that too, I think the uniqueness of this story is connected to a national story, right? That you have it's fascinating to me. Out of a hospital, a church emerges, right? That there is...
It's built a community.
Absolutely, right?
Absolutely.
That it is a fascinating story, right? And so that's a little bit about the work that we do in the center, at the museum. If you know, the community curation has been in here in Nashville. I think they're about to wrap up. They've been here.
The group at Fisk, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Where out of the Robert F. Smith Center, I don't know if you're familiar with Robert F. Smith, the Black billionaire who paid off the Morehouse students. That's usually my reference point for folks. I'm like, the students. He gave the museum $20 million to start a center for digitization. And their job is to help Black religious institutions, HBCUs, fraternities and sororities, all of these spaces preserve their history digitally.
What's the name of this?
The group that's here now is Community Curation.
Okay.
And it's out of the Center for Digitization, the Robert F. Smith Center for Digitization. And so that's the work that they've been doing. So they're working with Fisk, they're working with American Baptist College, TSU, they're doing a few things. But they also had slots for community.
Right.
So if you wanted to you had old home movies and you wanted to have those digitized, they do that for free. If you got photos that are deteriorating, or a bunch of photos, and you're like, oh, I would love to have some of these digitized, they do it right on the spot and give you a junk file for it. And so they're not a collecting wing of the museum. So we tell people they're not going to collect your items. They're just here to help you preserve them.
Which is important.
Which is important in and of itself, right? Particularly as we think about the digital, right? Because we know, listening about a fire, right? I've gone out for the Smithsonian after hurricanes to meet with people in communities who lose things, right? That the digital becomes another way that we can create backups to the work that we're doing. Oh, come on,
Hello.
You're fine. Okay, perfect. And so Kim is my colleague. He works our public programs producer and writer and director of our film. So we're excited about that as well. But that is really the work that we've been doing. Oh, and he's a Hampton alum. Same here.
Oh man, Oakwood.
You know what? I wore my Hampton gear so I didn't have to wear my Ravens gear.
That's quite appropriate.
I thought so.
It's a beautiful campus.
It is indeed.
Thank you.
It's almost as beautiful as Howard, yeah.
We're not gonna have that.
We're not gonna do that
We're not gonna do
today.
that.
We're gonna keep it friendly.
Say it wasn't for Georgia Avenue, we would have y'all.
Well, that's gentrified. That's the one benefit Howard has gotten is from that gentrification. But fellow Hamptonian, amazing.
76.
Ah,
83.
2008, I think.
Okay, you have your generation.
Yeah.
You can curate.
Look, absolutely. Look, we'll
Different
talk afterwards.
decades.
I love to know about. You know, we have some questions we ask as Hamptonians. Where you stay? But that. It has been a joy to do the work and to really to travel. Kim and I, we're road partners, so we have been domestic and abroad collecting Black religion and spirituality from Paris to Switzerland to
Feels
Sweden.
good though, doesn't it?
It does. It feels amazing to preserve our history.
Do you have an Instagram for your particular that we could follow or something that I'd be very interested in keeping up with what this particular group is doing?
Yeah,
You don't even know what Instagram is.
Yes, I follow the museum on Instagram, but I don't know it's specifically their part.
Benny, don't confess. Denise follows
No,
the
no,
Smithsonian.
Denise doesn't follow that. I do. But yeah, I've been following these guys ever since I went up there for their first visit.
Yeah. We have personal ones.
Okay.
The museum doesn't allow departments.
Oh.
So we are all one
gotcha.
Instagram.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah. But I'll share all my information with you.
Okay.
But it has been amazing to do the work and to particularly in religion and spirituality, right? That you're in community with folks who even we found talking to atheists, right? Even still have a belief in something, right? There's some about the church, about the work that you all have been doing. I'm gonna go around and see if everybody can introduce themselves. I've met some folks, but if you give me your names again, I'm probably gonna ask one more time after that. But give me a little space and a little grace in that. But then learn more about it, how you all have been engaged in the work that you've been doing, and learn as much as I can. Again, this time is about learning, hearing from you all, listening, seeing. I got to see some of the things that you had in the lobby and the ephemera and the artifacts, which is amazing. And then see where we go in your interests or thoughts around potentially donating some things to the museum. Again, that's a longer process. It's not something we will begin until next year sometime to really talk through. I typically like to have conversations with folks, let communities think about it, because it's, you are giving up of some things, right? And so it is really thinking about if this is a journey you want to take, what does that mean? What does that look like? In our religious institutions, people got to have meetings about things. So, and that's just us, right? And it crosses all traditions, that unless you're collecting from an individual, right? So I'm meeting now with the family of Calvin Butts, Dr. Butts, who pastored Abyssinia Baptist Church in Harlem, who passed away this year. And so, there's meetings, because you got the church and you got the family, right? So we understand that process and those journeys as well. And so I'll start to my right, because we've met, we're going to spend some more time together, but I'll start, if you just give me your name, how long you've been in the community and a part of the church, and what role you play.
Yeah. My name is Benny Thompson. I've been in Nashville since 1974, originally from Jackson, Mississippi. Became an Adventist in 1970.
Amen.
And I went to Jackson State University.
The
The sonic boom of the South.
The sonic boom. Dion. We can tell.
Well, Dion was there for 3 years, and we're grateful for that. Yeah. But we started the Historical Society here in Nashville, and I think it was 2017. If I remember correctly. Yeah. I got together with some of the people you see here, and we kind of pulled it together. Just sitting around in people's homes. I think it was Betty Slusher's house. You see pictures on the wall of the church, and we start talking about things, and we start asking, is there a repository at Riverside? Where do we have these things that we can go and look? And there was nothing. And we said that, and you look at the hospital, because I moved here in '74, the hospital was still open, I think it closed in '83.
It is.
That's correct.
But I was in pharmaceutical sales and management. I knew a lot of the doctors and people in the area of Meharry. I knew the connection between Meharry and Riverside Hospital and whatnot. So I thought that having something where we could talk about these things and preserve them and explain to the youth and to show people what the connection was and what the hospital did in the community. Because at one time, the hospital had like a $50 million budget in this area. When you look at how many times the dollar turned over in this community in North Nashville from Riverside and the whole community that they had here, all the suppliers and everything. It's a wonderful story to tell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
I'm Hope Campbell. I came, I'm wife of Earl Campbell over there.
You're welcome.
It's never, so blessed, so blessed. So we came to Nashville in '93 from Maryland. And I was just, so by '93 the hospital was closed and everything. But I worked with Benny in Sabbath school, with equivalent of Sunday school. And when he talked about history, I've always been a collector. I'm a pharmacist and a college professor by practice, and I collect apothecary stuff. So when it comes to collecting and history, I just absolutely love that. And so I just joined in with the efforts here. At the church, I currently serve as the leader for fellowship. And so we're responsible for engaging in more social event planning, that sort of thing. So that's what I lead. And then I try to support gardening around the place over the years. But I've been like Sabbath school leader in different roles like that. But
Well, why don't you share about your ministry?
the homeless.
Home?
Oh, well, yeah. We also involved in a homeless ministry here that
Yeah.
we started in May of 2019. We go out at least once or twice a month to feed the homeless, and we went out this past weekend. We had 21 people come out with us. We passed out 125 meals and close to 3,000 items of clothes and food.
That's amazing.
Because to me, the other part of Riverside, when I moved here in 1974 and joined the church here, was there was a real community involvement that mainly was generated from the hospital. They were involved in all these kind of things. They would go to nursing homes and all of these things they would do. They were not really something that was a duty of the hospital people, but something that they felt necessary to do. Dr. Dent, who was here, had a private plane, and he flew around Mississippi, Tennessee, and Alabama, delivering free health care when he could. So
And
that
Dr.
was,
Dixon.
and Dr. Dixon also. So that was that real thing about giving back, that when you walked in Riverside, you felt that need. It wasn't just something where we came to church on Saturday, on Sabbath, and had services. There was a community involvement level that you
Yeah.
felt.
Absolutely.
I'm Dwayne Hamilton. I came to Riverside in '95. I came to Nashville in late '70s, but I came to Riverside in '95. I've been involved in media, audio, and visual since then. Yeah. So that is what brought me here.
Thank you.
Paula Major. I came to Riverside in '79, '80. I'm from Houston originally, and I came to the Historical Society at Benny's invitation. So this was like after, was this post-COVID?
No, this was pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
When I got involved?
No, pre-COVID, yeah.
Pre-COVID,
Yeah.
because remember we had the
The-
church, the anniversary and the mortgage burning and all of that, and you were
I
very.
was
That was
involved.
before COVID, yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the marker was put up in October of 2018. You
That
were
was
there.
only a year or two after Puck got here.
Oh, well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. And we have the city put up a historical marker for our hospital. So,
And the pagoda.
yeah, I'll let you tell them about that. I'm just,
But Paul's
helping hand.
Yeah, but Paul's background is in radio advertising, and you're talking about writing scripts and doing voiceovers and stuff. And Dwayne also. Dwayne's a fantastic singer.
those two.
And those
Those
two,
two.
the
Great.
voiceovers and the scripts for that kind of thing, marvelous. Tremendous talents.
Yeah, so I had a career in broadcast journalism in Houston, and then when I moved here, it was for a job, and ended up staying here. So, you know, of course, we were in the old church building, which burned down, so I got married over there, my son was dedicated over there. He grew up in this church, and he has a brick from the fire, because I mean,
He
was a-
does?
Okay, Benny.
We're looking for
He-
bricks.
you know, he was attached to the church, and
What's your son's name?
Why is that important?
What's that, what's his name?
Laurent?
Who has the brick?
Lerone.
Okay.
He's named after one of the editors at Johnson Publishing. I was just bringing that up.
Bennett.
Point that out.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so
Interesting.
we're still here. I'll put it like that.
Yeah, awesome, thank you.
So I've been in some leadership positions, like Hope, primarily in Sabbath school. Did a lot of Bible study, what we call Spirit of Prophecy studies for ages, different seasons. Just
You
helping hand.
You worked the boards too, didn't you? The
Oh yeah, I did
sound
run the
system.
audio for a few
Yeah,
years
both of them, yeah.
when we first moved here. Till they decided they wanted to pay somebody to run audio.
Well, that's a whole other subject.
I could come to church then.
Come then.
Skip maybe, you don't matter.
Go to Earl.
Okay, my name is
Oh,
Earl,
I was a
Earl
kid.
Campbell Jr. I've been in Nashville since 1993, as Hope mentioned earlier. And I'm just excited to be a part of this Riverside Historical Society. When we look at the fact that we can get together on a point in time, discuss the history of Riverside, think of our legacy and our responsibilities, including sharing our history with the younger members of our community. We have a legacy as it relates to healthcare, and being someone in healthcare, we realize that we have to give back to our community. So on an annual basis, we have been having, other than during the pandemic, period of the pandemic, having an annual free clinic that has sort of metamorphosed into a free dental clinic. We've always given back. We recognize that everything we do and everything in our community is interrelated. And so even on this campus, we have our F.A. Jenkins school down the road, we have remnants of the hospital, we have the building that is being refurbished, where Dr. Dent, who we spoke about recently, and Dr. Dixon had a private practice caring for those who were in need. So it's the responsibility is great. We realize what we're facing, but with interaction with individuals like you, we can learn how we can better do what we need to do. And just excited to have you here, and I'm very excited to share the history. And as you mentioned initially, it is not just a local church or a local Nashville history. When you look at the inception of this journey, we realize that there are national and international involvement. One of the individuals I'm very excited about looking at the start of Riverside is Dr. Charlotte Lottie Isabel Blake, who was a black physician, went to medical school, graduated in 1902, came back from Columbus Ohio, came here to start the Riverside Sanitarium. Subsequently got married to a Dr. James Blake. And I'll stop right here because I see I'm getting excited. But it's local, national, and international. And it's not, I'm not saying that to brag, just saying that to say that we have the opportunity to give and share so much.
Absolutely.
I'm Sharon Johnson. I've been here since 1974. I've been a member, I think I'm a member. I really don't know. I don't know if they transferred my membership from where I was, but I'm here. So, for off and on since 1974, there was a period where I wasn't here, but I still was a member because I didn't transfer my membership. So that's me.
Sharon's background is information too.
Yeah, librarian.
She's a librarian.
Her father was one of the ministerial leaders in our area, and
She's a PK.
and did a lot of work in the Nashville area, and so there's a real connection there.
Now, how does the van that Elder Moore used to have, and he took to the
Oh, yeah.
the 1963 March on Washington?
March on Washington,
Yes.
yeah.
It was a health van.
Yeah.
Well, he used to take it all around.
So he took them all around the conference. The conference had the van before the March on Washington,
Yeah.
and then Elder Dudley and them, the people, and they were in charge of, as my understanding, they were the healthcare people for the March on Washington. There was one of those,
Yes.
like an RV.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mobile,
we have pictures of it.
mobile unit.
Yeah, and it was actually at DC for the March on Washington,
Hmm.
and it was there for healthcare, and we actually found that old van recently
What?
back in the woods, and we're trying to get it.
You found it?
We found it, yeah.
I thought it
Down
was in
in
a junkyard
No, we found it
Hmm.
back in some trees and bushes down
Where?
in Franklin.
in Franklin.
Yep, we found it, and we're gonna try to get it out and get it refurbished.
Oh, that's
Wow.
wonderful.
Yeah.
That's
That's wonderful.
now,
That's
see,
amazing.
I was wondering what we had to offer, and that was one of the big things. But I thought it was long.
It was a big
No,
thing,
no,
right? It was a
we
big thing.
found
It
it.
is a literal big
We
thing.
found it. We
I don't
found
know
it.
where that
We-
put
No,
it.
we got to do that, man.
Where is it?
The interesting thing about that van too is that Dr. Dent would make
That's good.
annual visits to towns like in
Yeah,
Mississippi
pictures of
that
it.
had
Can't
no
take everything.
office availability
No, we
to the
need
people
to have.
and do exams,
We showed
dress
pictures when we found
exams,
it.
all kinds of exams.
Hmm.
And sometimes that van was the only place that went to
Mhm.
service the poor in those little towns, and we used to go and assist him on that.
And he did disaster whenever
You know
there was
better.
disaster.
And disaster, but my point is,
They would.
he
they would
didn't
always
wait
go.
for
I
a
remember
disaster.
seeing it.
He went to serve
Yeah.
because
I
he
didn't
knew there were
realize.
needs.
Yeah, and
You
he was a
know,
member,
doing
yeah.
other things.
Yeah, when he was a member here,
When we
but
first
he
moved
was
to
one
town,
of the,
I said,
he was
Yeah.
the member here.
The member.
Um,
she is history.
Oh my gosh.
That's probably pretty true. I came here at the age of 21. Praise God, I'm 74 and 9 months currently.
She coming in.
So I've been on this campus ever since. Dr. Dent, the one we were talking about, recruited me from Southern Missionary College, that's in Abbott, it's a private school in Collegedale. And it's interesting, he's always been interesting. He would come and he would take us out to dinner, and he had a private plane, he'd take us up, riding, everything. And I remember coming, age 21, you're pretty young, you know, but just getting on the campus was so inviting. Very calming, very full of nature. And when I say this was a community, it indeed was. I lived on campus. At one time, I lived in the dorm. One time, I had a house on campus. On this campus, we had little one-room apartments for nursing students and the dorm. We had houses for family. And I was one of the first single ones that they allowed to have a house, and I'm glad, so I could get more stuff in it than one room. You know, I love stuff. But anyway, to have your grocery store, your gas station, your friends you work with, your church, your play area. At one time, there was a swimming pool, tennis court, volleyball area. Remember, Riverside evolved around 4 principles. When I say Riverside, I'm speaking of the hospital. That is alternative measures to treat illnesses, healthy eating, exercise, and those things by electronics that we did a lot of biofeedback and helping to relax the patient. I learned so much over the years. I mean, 46 years in nursing. Of course, I stayed until Riverside closed in '83, so you can imagine.
You were the nursing director then, when it closed?
Not, it closed. I was the nursing director right before the cycle, just before it closed. And so, part of my heart, you can imagine. But it's just been a wonderful ride. Not perfect, but just wonderful. In the community sense, that helped me to know truly what a community was all about and giving back. Because we were a big family, you know. If I needed something, Sharon would be there for me. If I needed some food for Sabbath, Hope would invite me. I'm just saying, it was so filled with family. And that to me colors the whole life and helping to train us how to give back. Little things, but things that are so important. I served many roles here at Riverside, the hospital, from charge on up to nursing director. Then I went to Meharry, and I was in their first midwifery program. There were 5 of us there. And one of my greatest pleasure was going to Mount Bayou. Have you heard of that? All black town in Mississippi. And so Meharry sent their nurse midwives and the residents and all interns to provide service there to that clientele. As far as the church, served in many capacities over the years. The one of duration is I work with the seniors of Riverside, and God gave us that vision 25 years ago, and it's still going. And we have a co-leader with us here, and Hope was on it too, and Earl's brother, but it's still moving and they're still active, and I think we're blessed each day, each week, each month. Our goal is to first praise God for longevity. So we celebrate all birthdays to them. The church pays for the dinner. We meet monthly. Every other month, we do a seminar that's designed only for seniors, be it finances, taxes, mental health, nutrition, exercises, those types of things. We visit the sick, you know, and try to meet their needs by whatever we can do, but staying in connection. And even during COVID, we didn't miss a beat. Praise be to God. Because Meredith McCraw taught our seniors how to use the computer to get onto Zoom, and we're FaceTiming, and we were talking, we haven't missed a beat, and I thank God for that. And so it has met a lot of needs for a lot of people. Just pray that we can continue to bless others through our small efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Why did the hospitals, and
Why the businesses fail in the black community.
I
I
had some assumptions, right?
I mean, we lost as much with integration as we gained, I think. and
We
that was
lost
one of
everything with him.
Well, just straight up racism. The hospital was run by Adventist Hospital Group, Adventist Health, and they closed the hospital here, even though it was profitable. And sorry, it was making money, because it was a 50-bed hospital, and there was a time when 50-bed hospitals were very profitable, but you know, things would change with reimbursement and so forth. And but we can put you in touch with Mac Rucker, who was the last CEO of the hospital. I mean, we have people who can give you detailed information about that, but they closed the hospital, and it was a bad situation.
And they thought that the patients would transfer to Madison, which was in essence
There's a white
the White
Adventist
Hospital.
It's the
about 10
sister
miles from
Tennessee
hospital
Christian.
competition.
Right.
Actually, we had gone up from the 50-bed to 150-bed in the
Right.
new hospital.
Mhm.
But Madison is what, 50 miles from here? And they were established before we were. Say no more. And it was doing DRGs. Have you heard of DRGs? Anyway, it was doing DRGs time.
Diagnosis related groups.
A lot of money was being lost both places. Well, they were not gonna sacrifice Madison, a larger number of beds or a smaller number of
Right, as
beds.
they mentioned, integration was a part of it too, because at one time, obviously,
A big-
you had to have a separate, you had Meharry and Riverside, and you had Vanderbilt, Fisk, Baptist, all the white hospitals. But at some point in time, they started accepting black patients. So the services at black hospitals were dropping
Yes,
because of it. So
that
that's
as
just a
well.
combination.
Decided to go
that
Yeah,
as
so-
well.
Because you know how some like my grandfather used to say, white man's ice is better, it's colder.
Yeah. Look, I'm from the South, so I know that
You
very,
probably heard that phrase.
very much so. What impact did the hospital have closing on the church?
Closing of the hospital.
What did the closing of the hospital, how did it impact the
Grief
church?
and sorrow more than anything else.
Yes,
Well, not,
long
We lost
time.
people too though, because there were people who were hospital based, and the Madison Hospital put a freeze on hiring people at the time.
At the time,
At the same time.
The
So
same day
the
the
same day
announcement
was
was
made.
made about the closing.
they put a freeze
They
on hiring.
froze it right away. Now, they did release it later
You know
on.
later on, but you can
So
see.
that's the juice, okay.
So
Yeah.
spill the tea, as they say.
Yeah.
But, so people had to leave town. I mean, Mac Rucker and those people ended up going to Florida, you know, because those kind of jobs and so forth. So a lot of good people, what's the lady's name? Who was
Sandy.
over-
Sandy,
Sandy, no, but who's over nursing?
Jeannie Allen.
Gene.
Yes,
Oh,
Jane,
wow.
yes. All these people had to leave.
But it wasn't like a mass exodus. There were people, a few people. Like the
But
people
some
he's
stayed.
mentioning, but I mean,
administrators, a lot.
yeah.
But you're
Different than
looking
their
for a
families.
job, how many places are you
Right.
gonna get hired,
Right,
you know,
right.
in that case, so they were going to, trying to find
And the morale
comparable
thing
jobs.
was, because I found an article, that I think, Paul, you gave me this, that people tried to keep hospital, there was an article that appeared in the local paper, the Tennessean, where the local NAACP offered to give the hospital $275,000 to have to stay open. So the people in the community were trying to rally around the hospital to keep it open, to whatever it needed, but it fell on deaf ears.
Can I say one positive thing? But in the same week, we had Dr. Sasser from Meharry come and talk to the whole staff in the cafeteria with me, inviting us to come over to Meharry for jobs. So arms were open from the top. We want you. And he was very, very supportive, verbally as well, and recognizing the pain that we all were feeling.
So I guess I came 10 years after, so I don't know what it was before, but I just came to a church and there were all these professionals around, you know, in different categories. I mean, but the ward, you know, physical therapy, Brother Benson, you know, he was X-ray technician, and then there were the it was, I remember years later when we had Pastor Stafford was our pastor, and he did a program in the mornings, on Saturday mornings. He did a radio short, I guess now almost like podcast kind of stuff. Anyway, he would preach on something, and a young lady came and she's like, I just want to be around successful black people. I want my children to be around this because I've never seen this concentration. Hello, Benita. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so, for a very long time, I think some people just aged out. A part though that struggled, they didn't have the hospital and their identity came out of the hospital. So the church is like, what's my mission? How do I do that when I don't have the hospital? But I don't think membership dropped at, I don't know, because I wasn't there in 83.
I don't think so,
I came on
although-
93, you know.
I don't think so. I don't think, I mean, like, there were transfers, but they didn't just like go the next month, and some of them were a couple of years getting out, you know. But, I don't remember it falling.
No, and I think some of, I can remember some of hospital personnel going to Baptist, and like you said, Meharry, and
Finding
other,
facilities.
absolutely.
So how has, and I want to read, I'm going to take some photos and read a lot of this. Yes, please. So where are you in your journey as a historical society? And
That's a good question.
talking about, you know, from my lens, I think from the religious perspective, right? But how have you, the marker is important, right? Getting those, capturing those stories, and just listening to your stories, many of these folks would be seniors now.
Oh,
right?
or
Those
passed on.
Or passed on. Those who were in the hospital when it was closing, or those who were working, are all in the senior age. And so you have generations now that don't know this place connected to a hospital, right? They just know the church. And so how is the historical society, which is a part of the church, how is the church creating identity outside of that hospital now, right? And that's a loaded question, right? But that how is, in preserving and naming this history, because I think it's important to name, I think it's a distinction of the church, right? That you know, I tell them, we gotta talk about our history. We gotta keep it, because that's who we are, right? Particularly for this place, because there is no church without the hospital, right?
No.
So I can remember members once the hospital closed, cooking in their kitchen, packing up little bags to take out to the homeless. You know, so I mean, it's not, members found other ways to minister to the community, in other words. So as already been mentioned, we have these health clinics, dental clinics, we have the homeless ministry. So I mean, I can remember what we call the Adventist Youth Society, that afternoon program for youth, you know, that they became very involved in the community when we had the big flood and hurricane and all of that stuff. So
picking off all that paper off.
it has found ministry in the community since
community,
and because the hospital closed.
Well,
So
I
it
hear
may
you
have been a
asking-
blessing. In
So is now, what is the Historical Society doing
To foster.
to either, are you asking us, well, what are we doing to maintain and show this history? Or what are we doing going forward to,
I think it's both, right? So how are you maintaining it, right? Because here's the thing. The people that know this hospital and remember it in some capacity are all over the age of 40.
Oh.
50, really.
60.
Right?
60.
Right? But like, and the youngest group, because you said it closed in what?
83.
83. So the youngest millennial was 2, right? So they're not going to remember that, right?
right?
They may have been born there.
Mhm.
That the oldest millennial was born in 81. So you have 2 years of babies, 3,
Right on the margin.
right on the margin, right, of a generation. So it hit every generation prior to that, from its founding to then, and it went to the millennial generation, which is a blessing in some ways because it is a fundraising point, right, and a point in which you can connect to millennials, right, because the hospital closes when the oldest subset of them are being born, right. So that's your entry point to a younger generation of like, no, this touched you too. Some of y'all were born here, right? But then also, how are you getting younger people invested in the story, right? Outside of, young people don't want to just hear history, right? They're going to tone off, unfortunately. It's just a dying, technology is the name of the game, right? How are you particularly giving them, because now it's just the church, so these kids know Riverside.
We've been
Chapel.
struggling with that. We
Right.
talked about that earlier in the year, about how to get more younger people involved, to keep them involved. And recently we have got
Yeah.
somebody involved by actually giving them assignments within the group, but I'd like to hear your suggestions on that.
We have 3 young individuals on our committee.
Mhm.
And the month of November, we're having Heritage Harvest, as I mentioned, where we're trying to get the congregation to share with us their artifacts. And the promo, we needed to do a 1-minute promo
Mhm.
for that launch, and it was your son
Your son. and
Your
his
son
grandson.
and
And Jackson.
and Jackson Hubbard, like same age group. They're
Young.
how old is he?
20-somethings.
27, 28, 29.
Oh, I thought
Maybe
he was
the
23.
Right, and they created that, they did that video,
That
and
whole
so they
thing.
worked with older members, but the bottom line is, they felt like maybe that was something that
They could do.
they could do.
Yeah.
So, they're also working and creating like the logo, and so they come to meetings and they'll, for example, the school, we said, well, guys, we have to write down the history. They're like, okay, we'll take the school, because they were longer, maybe students off the school. So hospital was 83, but they probably went to the school maybe a year or new friends later. So it kind
How
of
long
tailed
is
out.
the school still open?
It's
Yes.
still open.
Yes, very active.
So the school
Very
becomes the
cool.
lineage, a
Yes.
longer lineage.
Uh-huh.
Same
Absolutely.
duration of the hospital
No.
time?
Before, the
No.
school started in 19.
That I think that, and we're doing one today, right? But I think there's a way in which you all should consider doing oral histories, right? And being intentional about them, and really creating an archive of all the members, but not just members, community folks. And you could do a call for it, right? And that's a great thing to connect with the local news, all of those other things that you all are doing a call. If you were born in that hospital, if you worked in that hospital and you're still here, if
We
you
wanna talk to you.
we want to talk to you, right?
Great
and
idea.
and whether they were a janitor or a nurse,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Because at
Or if you had
this,
surgery
or
there.
if you had right, because at this
Yeah.
point, you're trying to keep that
Wow.
history from going to the grave,
Wow, good idea.
right?
So on that edge here, I have a stack of letters that I approach people from the community,
Mhm.
not just the church.
Mhm.
Back as far as 57 that finish in the nursing school, that they've written up their story
And that's
and
beautiful.
their interpretation
Yeah.
of what Riverside was, and showing what Riverside was doing in the community that has impacted all
Yeah.
the blacks in this area. So,
So that's another form of his oral history, right?
Yeah.
It's just not video.
right.
So I would
right.
say that goes in that.
Okay.
What I'm suggesting is that you are getting audio and video too,
Yeah,
particularly because you want young people interested in it.
yes,
They're not reading,
right,
unfortunately.
right.
And you know, it's sad.
Right,
As a
but
former
it's
English
true.
teacher, the kids don't read.
Yeah.
They don't.
They
Right?
don't.
And
They
we
don't.
have, black males have the lowest literacy rate, right? So like, they're absolutely, right?
I'm
That
not
there
surprised with
is, we are visual learners.
Mhm.
Right, so you're asking us to do something. We're kinesthetic and visual, like we like to touch and do and move and
Mhm.
feel it.
Action.
The action. But I really think that it's thinking about those are important because that becomes a part of another archive,
Mhm.
right?
Because they're, nobody can tell my story.
It's your
I
story to
have
tell.
to tell my story.
Absolutely. Right? And so I think that really being strategic. Now you're not gonna be able to record everyone.
Mhm.
Right? So I think the beauty of it is that when you're doing this call to these folks, you're gonna have to create, whether it's 3 of y'all or the whole thing, do some preliminary questions with folks. Like, do they have a fullness to sit? Like, you can't capture everybody's story, right? In that instance where if you connected and they did, maybe it is you have some of them write it. Hey, would you mind writing this? Or would you mind recording yourself on voice notes? Talking about the hospital, because that's still oral tradition.
That's true.
Right.
People can call in.
They can call, you can do an automated line and they can call in and leave it on a voice message that
Automated line.
automatically transmits it, transcribes it, and puts it up. I think it's opening it up to say we want video, we want voice, we want audio, we want written,
Variety.
right? We want, because you got some seniors who are not going to sit on the
Okay.
camera.
When you write, do you want, we're now typing,
We're
right?
typing.
Or do you like to see handwriting?
I think that the question, as a museum person, I would love to see some handwriting too, but I also know that that's a dying thing.
Okay.
And so I think you have to capture both. Right? You're going to have some folks who are like, they don't use the computer like that.
That's
so
right.
get their
That's
written.
right.
and
That's
then
what
that's-
happened to my kid.
Yeah.
Well, she's
What-
90.
Right? And that's when you get your young people to transcribe.
While he's saying this, I want to challenge the group for Black History Month. Let's do what he's talking about. Our project for Black History Month. Reach back, get all these histories in February. That gives us time to work to get prepared.
And
for
I
it.
would offer, you ain't going to be able to do it all in 1 month.
No, but
Right?
we can. Yeah.
Put you we want 10, right? Or we want 20, however many that number is for you all. But I think some of them when they have those compelling stories, and you all will know when you're listening and you want to record them, right? You want them to sit and talk about this and this space and the church and the hospital, right? And I think that the oral history project would be really beneficial for you all. And maybe you may say, look, we're not ready to fully video, so maybe it's just audio and written, right? And again, you can do one of those voice answer machine lines and promote it and have people call and they can record and just talk on the line and it records them and it'll transcribe it and you have it. So you have
What do
this.
you call that now? What kind of those?
There's these different ways, there's different services that you can do like voice, like calling an answer machine.
Okay.
And you give them a
It's-
prompt.
There's
So, does
public
this
radio
work
does-
like
That's
I
one that
have
storyline,
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
I listen to
Her
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Public radio.
there's some compelling
You know,
stories.
Very good stuff. I
you
love
need
that.
to share her mother.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if she's
That's
sitting
library
doing
conference.
stuff,
Yeah.
she's writing down
Call
the
in.
Absolutely.
information.
Absolutely.
Is that, I think
StoryCorps
that's the sponsor.
does it. The thing about StoryCorps is you aren't going to own it. StoryCorps owns it.
Yeah, yeah, but we're talking,
We can
we're
do
talking,
something
but
like
the
that.
same
Similar.
Yeah.
Yes,
Similar
I think
story.
that for the sake of you
Now,
all,
is
you're
that the
gonna wanna-
Library of Congress StoryCorps?
No, it's a
It's
separate
not.
organization.
Okay, okay.
Mhm. You're gonna want to do it yourself so that you hold the repository.
Right.
You guys are
That we
nerds.
own.
Y'all know about story.
We want to really figure out who becomes the repository of this, right? Because you all transition, and
Oh, dear.
those three.
A nice word.
I mean, we all will at some point, right? We all will. And these three young people that you have go off to college or the military, and they're not here, right? Where is it archived? Where is all of this material?
We're working on that now.
Right, so it'll go over there.
In that building.
So in thinking about that is you're gonna want to create an archive, right? And you may want to think about down the line, and it's something you have to do tomorrow as you're doing this, that you, unless somebody has that experience and that time to be an archivist, the librarian, I don't want to volunteer you, because that's
It's
I
done.
appreciate that.
All in favor say aye.
I don't want to volunteer.
Next thing the librarian gonna transition on us. Stop it. Stop it.
But that there is some work that in thinking about, and don't think about what you want to see. Think about what somebody's going to want 50 years from now. Right? At the Smithsonian, we think in perpetuity. I'm not going to collect anything that I don't know going to be here in 100 years.
Wow.
Right? Because I got to know that I had colleagues, not our museum because we're new, but at other museums who've been collecting over 100 years, right? Over 200. Smithsonian's 175 years old. So those first early curators were not just collecting for them, they were collecting for us, right? That we could go and use some of that stuff. So thinking about what is the future going to want to know about this place, right? That we hope, as we're here now, that this all will be here 50 to 100 years from now. We don't know, right? But we want to make sure that it is chronicled for the sake of history's sake. The people who have worked on this work, and as much information and ephemera that you can keep. The next thing I would tell you and encourage you as you're asking church members to bring in things, I think it's also going to be important that you all put some things in place that some church members are going to bring in some stuff you ain't never seen. Right? And some of it, because people have just been taking care of stuff the best way they know how to take care of things. It may not be in the best condition. And so it's a conversation of not only them bringing in, but as they're bringing it in and you're borrowing it, I would actually keep a record of who has what. Right? So you may not be able to keep it because you're asking them to bring in things just for you to see and to display.
No, we're asking people to donate. Hopefully we will have the legal documents to actually receive some, borrow some, or whatever. And
Even if you're borrowing,
okay,
keep an internal
I
record.
see what you're saying.
Right.
So who has what?
Who has what?
Because on a particular
It
day.
still
Wow.
can
Because when
be.
people pass away, their children go in and start throwing
Mhm.
stuff away that they don't think is important, right? Because it's just like,
I like that.
we're dealing with grief, and so
Yeah.
we just got to get rid of this stuff. And
Okay.
this, they know, because they didn't get the story, that parent or that grandparent knows exactly what that means, right?
Wow.
They didn't tell the children, or they didn't tell the grandchildren. And we
Yeah,
see it
yeah.
so often, right? So I think it's something that the things you don't, somebody may say, no, I'm not donating that to you. I'm not giving that to y'all right now. Oh, cool. Okay. We have a document to know that Sister such and such has this photo. And this is something you can talk about down the line, right? That
Wow.
not in that moment, maybe we talk about, can this photo be donated back to the church upon your transition?
Her transition.
Right? Because you're thinking long term that, right, people donate
That's deep.
stuff to museums and things all the time after they, it comes. But like, can we ensure that this book or this journal comes to us at the end of this, right? Your organization will help with granting, right? And your ability to know exactly what you have, right? So I'm thinking of IMLS, the library sciences, and all of these places that give grants for stuff like this, that you are trying to preserve and the uniqueness of it is it's just not a church, right? Because if you were a church, that's a whole nother thing.
We
They're
need a
religious.
501(c) status for that, right?
Y'all have one. You got a school,
Yeah. Okay,
you got a
we'll use
church,
that. That's true.
you can use whichever one you want to use.
Okay.
And I'm
Don't
assuming
worry, we don't
that,
need another one.
right?
We'll figure that out.
That
So y'all really have a church.
Okay,
to-
cool.
Already.
can you pause me 1 second? It can hit a corner, should not be outside. now because the building's not there
Right.
anymore,
It's gone.
right?
Yeah.
So someone that should be put up somewhere, and it should be encased, right? And I would probably have them encase it and either sit it up. A framer could tell you if it could hold the weight of sitting up,
Because it's very heavy.
or if it just needs to be laid down. Because what you could do,
It's out there now.
it can be laid up and propped, whether you put it in the vestibule of the church, and it sits there and it's encased and people can walk by and see it, or whatever. But you want to just kind of how you have the stained glass. You're going to want to those pieces of ephemera.
I have some more pieces of the glass. Well,
Yeah.
I'm
From
holding
the
it,
likeness, yeah.
but it belongs to a member.
Yeah.
But there are bigger pieces. I just used that little
Yeah.
piece because it was.
You're
I
going to
didn't
want
want
to.
to get too much out there.
Right,
Those
we
are
got-
so pretty.
We have the glass from 16th Street before when the church was
Ooh,
bombed,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So all we have is the shreds of glass. We're working now to collect some other things from the church, but we have the shreds of the stained glass window, right? And they're
so
in the
pretty.
museum, but sometimes that's all you have left, and that's okay, right? It's a grieving in the morning, but it's okay, right? But how do you preserve what you have,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And I think that's where you all have to get to of how are we. Photos and things are going to be important. Any 3D material things that you're like, that was from the church, that was in that space, you got it, y'all need to put that up until you're ready to have it conserved and have work done. Because the more people touch it, the more people engage it, the more work you have to do down the line. And that image, I'm not giving you more work, but the person
Sharon, he's
Sharon
talking to you.
understands as a librarian what I'm about to say. I'm not saying that's you doing it, but you're going to want to have these things numbered,
Yeah, we talked about
right?
that.
Because the numbers should correlate from the
Right.
image I
Right,
got
there you go.
to what's on that
In the
spreadsheet.
database, yeah, that's
Right?
all. Yeah, we talked about that.
Because
We got
then
it
you
all.
don't have any ambiguity, and we see it all too often with churches, right?
Can't find anything.
You can't find nothing, right? Or this one person held everything
Right,
and had the record, and this person passes.
and no one.
That
And
happens.
children was like, well, we threw it away, it was in there, it didn't look important to us,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, that's our church's history. Well, I mean, we know she didn't,
Or they had their own system and don't nobody know
and
what
nobody
it was.
knows it, right? So we want to institutionalize your system here, right? That this is how we do things, and this is our. So if someone brings it in, however your system works, you know it's been numbered, labeled. Whether you have, I work for the government, so anything, I don't have it on here. Anything we have, it got a serial
Like
bar on
serial
the back.
number on the back, yeah.
Right? So
Identification.
they want to be able to identify everything that's theirs. So in doing that, that's easy with a little label. You know, you got it's numbered.
Mhm.
Put the little number on the back.
Mhm.
You can do it on a little card, so you don't want to stick it to the item.
Mhm.
But we know we have this, right? And again, don't feel like you. I know it's overwhelming. I'm
No,
here
we're
to
good.
help.
This is
I'm-
But
I'm-
that really thinking about what is going to be needed
Mhm.
for you all to do this, because what
Money.
I foresee, right? And that's what I'm saying. It's going to pause me again, brother. Next steps is to create your spreadsheet. I call it database, but right now to keep it so it doesn't seem daunting.
Yeah.
And a digital Excel.
Because you see all
Don't
the
do it
stuff I
on
have,
some one-person
boxes,
computer.
boxes and stuff.
Do the one that's in Docs.
Google Docs.
Google Doc. The Google Excel
So it can be-
spreadsheet.
yeah.
You all, everybody got access. So again, because once you do it on one computer and something happened to that computer, you done lost everything. Keep it in the ether, right? So that it's there, it's connected, and
Interesting.
maybe two or three people are responsible for updating. Everybody can't update it,
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
that these two
We can do
people
that.
are responsible for the updating. Again, you want to make sure you have as much information as possible, right, in that spreadsheet. As much information as you think you're gonna need. Not today, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, right?
Wow.
Thinking
That's-
about, we want to know, right? You have that note.
Mm-hmm.
We want to know in that spreadsheet who got her to get the note, right? So not only was she asked to write something, somebody asked her to do it, right? And so try to
Context.
keep context. So you can
Wow.
have a little in the spreadsheet just notes and type as much notes as you can for each thing. But in the other things is this is the person it belongs to. This is, I would have a category was this school, church, hospital, nursing school, right? Like so that you
Right.
know, so
Right.
you can
The
go through the
area.
So we
spreadsheet.
can say chapel versus church versus
Versus-
hospital
Absolutely.
versus.
Because the chapel is the old building, the original
Chapel
building.
is the
Yeah.
old
Okay.
church.
Right.
But then
But
also
we need to designate all that,
Okay,
put that
so-
in there. Yeah.
designate it, create it. You can code it. You
Mhm.
can say 1, 2, whatever. However you want to do that, you all create that internal.
Okay,
But
got
I-
it.
Absolutely. I would
You got
also
it.
say, in thinking about from there, and Jocelyn and could be great for you because she's local, right?
Yeah.
That thinking about how are we going to store this stuff, right? That's an important question to start asking yourselves. You ain't got to have an answer for it, but how are we going to store this stuff, right? Because paper, you can't just have sit in the folder.
As a tree, yeah.
We've talked
Are you
about some of
getting-
this.
But did you have a chance, you were saying something about ordering the stuff, the store stuff?
I haven't done it yet, but you said you have a
No,
list
I'm saying, will we be able to get it by when we're starting?
this weekend.
Yeah.
We'll probably order it
You
tomorrow.
got Prime.
Yeah, we have Prime.
Oh,
Somebody,
did you
somebody,
tell
somebody
me-
got
What
Prime.
did you tell me to do about notifying, how am I
Don't-
gonna identify, don't put it on
You
here?
don't write it on it because then you're imposing something.
Right,
All you got to do is in your database put who
the name of the person.
the name of the person, if you remember the date when it was taken.
I do, cause I have that written on another sheet.
And what you can do is get a blank sheet of paper as you're connecting these
Mhm.
and write that information in the front. So that when someone comes back and does the archival work later, they can create all of that other stuff.
Mm.
But you don't want to write on stuff that
They do.
that somebody else did.
Mhm.
So
Got it.
like I am fascinated with a brick. I'm fascinated with a remnant of the building. It burned. So even if it's like I take doors, I take like anything that speaks to what it was, right? Also thinking about we're the Smithsonian, so we don't take copies of things.
You'll take copies.
copies.
Oh,
It must be the
It
original.
must be the original, unless there was something that, like, if it was a program and 100 programs was made, but it was in 1950, we don't know where the rest of them are. We would take a copy of that, right? But thinking about things that speak to all the beautiful things you've talked about, you got to have something that speaks to health and the hospital, right? That also speaks to religion. Because as a curator of religion, I can only collect it through that lens, right? And so something that speaks to the hospital, something that speaks to the school, right? Something that speaks to the greater community and the chapel and the clinics, all of those different things. So whether it is a journal that somebody kept, whether it was a program from some programs, whether
Our
it was a
old
flyer,
newsletter.
old newsletters, if you have some copies of those, all of those different things help tell stories. Whether it's